Going. All right, so again, thank you guys all so much for being here today and for joining us. I'm going to take a second and introduce myself. My name is Callie Cackley. I am the program coordinator here at Central Oregon Disability Support Network. But really what brings me here today is I'm a parent. So that is what brings me to all the work that I do in my life. I've got 3 amazing kids. I've got Nolan, who is 7, Liam, who is 9, and then Mia, who is my daughter who experiences disability. She is 11. So Mia is turning 12 in September and entering middle school. So this conversation is perfectly timely for me because I am in the same boat with getting ready to do a big transition from elementary to middle school, which is why I'm here today. So we have a fantastic panel. I'm so excited and just honored and blessed that you guys all chose to join us today. We have a fantastic panel of 5 parents from across the state and a variety of ages that have offered to come share with us today some of their experiences that we can learn from, which I'm so grateful for. So I'm actually going to just jump us right into that, and I'm going to pass it off to our first panelist. And oh wait, before I do that, I'm so sorry. I forgot that we are going to go through a little list of what we're going to cover today. So we'll have each panelist share around 5 minutes, and then we will jump to a Q&A. We had some questions that came in ahead of time that we're going to ask our panel, and they will take turns kind of popcorn answering questions. We'll move into some tips and tricks. And then at the end, we're going to do breakout rooms by age. And so we're going to give you the option to join a room for middle school parents and a room for high school parents. And that way you can kind of get into a smaller group with some of our panelists and ask more specific questions. And so we'll really encourage you during the presentation to think about that. If there's questions that come up that you'd like to ask during that time, make sure you jot that down. And then we also would love if you guys are comfortable to unmute and turn your video on during that time and introduce yourself to the other people in the room, because you may find that there's other parents that you connect with on age and stage and location. So that's the flow of our time together. So with that, I will go ahead and pass it off to our first panelist. And Heather, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Callie. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. My name's Heather Olivier, and I'm actually from Southern Oregon, from the Medford area. So Matthew, hi from Ashland. I'm so glad that you were able to join us today from this area. So I just to give you a little bit of background, this is my family here. A little over a year ago, right before everything closed down, we were able to head to Disneyland, and this is just one of my favorite picks from there. Also a little bit bittersweet to recognize that this was last year, right before this time, but this is my husband, Chris. And this is my son, Noah, my daughter, Chloe, and then me. And my daughter is 12 and my son is 15. And he's really what brings me here. So my son is a freshman in high school. At the age of 4, he was diagnosed with autism. And that really was the start of our journey for what brings us here. I think that at the time, I was really bought into this deficit model of sort of believing all of the things he wasn't going to really be able to do. It's amazing how your vision can change from one day to the other, and yet the child is still exactly the same child, but something shifts within us. And I was really lucky in that I was able to be connected up with other parents who were on a similar journey or a few steps ahead, which is really, what family networks do. And that was a game changer for us, because what happened during that time is that I had been a middle school and high school teacher for many years and had sat in on a lot of IEP meetings. And what I found was that my experience in my transition to kindergarten meeting was very different than what I had experienced as a teacher. It's very different when it's your child and it's your heart walking around. And I realized that I really didn't understand how to navigate special education. And I also was really aware that I wanted him to be bubble wrapped and protected and as safe as he possibly could. And what that ended up doing is that Noah started out in kindergarten within a self-contained classroom. During that first year, I was really fortunate to have Roberta Dunn, who's the executive director of FACT Oregon, came into town to talk about dreaming big dreams and having a vision for your child's future. And that actually was the moment of change for me at that point, as a family, when we began to dream big dreams and think about what life would look like beyond school, even when my son was a kindergartner, and that was so scary. I realized that we weren't on that path, that trajectory is not what we were heading to, our vision that we had. And so that took, to be honest, that trying to work towards a change of placement from, a self-contained classroom into a general education classroom was extremely challenging because I didn't really understand how to navigate special education. I didn't really understand what that would look like to move in that direction. And so for me, what ultimately ended up happening is that we ended up homeschooling my son at the very beginning for a couple of years. And the reality is that became really challenging as he really was kind of tired of mom and wanting to, and also mom maybe was challenged by it as well. Not what maybe was, I definitely was. He then, we went back into public school where he was within a self-contained classroom, and we found ourselves really challenged to move towards more for him to access his least restrictive environment. And unfortunately, that was a challenge that we decided to pull him out. And then he was in a private school for a few years. What I will tell you is that was an opportunity. It was a Montessori school, and it gave us an opportunity to work on some of the self-regulation. And he was with his peers. He was included with his peers. And it was really powerful. And the progress that we saw during that time was amazing. And it set the stage for when we did re-enter our public school in order to advocate for an inclusive placement in his general education classroom with supports. That is where he has been since he started 5th grade, and he is a freshman in high school now, and he is excelling, and he receives all of his supports within a general education classroom, and he's thriving. He's thriving academically, and he's thriving socially. So we're really appreciative of the fact that that early information we received on the importance of high expectations, presuming competence, and having a vision for the future completely changed our family's trajectory, but more importantly, changed my son's trajectory. So I'm excited to be here and get to share with all of you. I'd love to introduce someone that I said earlier, but I didn't call her out by name, which is my friend, Emily, to share with you her journey as well.
Thank you, Heather. So I'm Emily Wilde Turner, and this is my family. So this is my big old family. I have 5 kids. We are an amazing hodgepodge of his and hers. I have 3 children that I grew in my body. Andrew, Brennan, and Parker, and 2 that came into my life when I fell in love and married my husband, Brett. And they are Grant and Olivia, and these are them. And Parker is the one grinning there on the floor, the youngest next to Grant, and he, at the age of 2, received a diagnosis of autism, and I'm just sitting here grinning at the picture and forgetting to talk. So my story is in some ways similar and in some ways different than my friend Heather's. And Parker received a diagnosis of autism pretty early. And like Heather, I really quickly embraced a deficit model, right? I embraced that special everything. I wanted to protect I felt this desire that Parker needed to ride, a special bus and be in a special program with a special everything. I, for whatever reason, thought the outside world was a scary place and he just needed to be protected. And then I met parents that were a little further along on this journey, and I became friends with people who experienced disabilities, and they were able to speak into my life, and our trajectory completely changed. My vision for what was possible for Parker's future completely changed and altered, and we started on a new path. So Parker, when he was in kindergarten, was in a self-contained kind of hybrid model. So he was in, early intervention and ECSE program, and then this kindergarten self-contained hybrid model that I said yes to because I wanted, in his neighborhood school, kindergarten was like 3 hours. And I thought, well, that's not enough school. So I said yes to this program that was like a self-contained classroom for half day, and then he would join the general ed kindergarten classroom for the second half of the day. And I told them, this is your boot camp year, and it was not his neighborhood classroom school. And they did it for 1 year, and then I had to fight really hard to get him into his neighborhood school the next year. But we did it. His neighborhood school, where his brothers went, did not, and still does not, have a self-contained classroom. So that was, that made it easy in some ways. We could talk about that later, but it made it easy because there wasn't a pull-out place to put him. Yes, that was said to me or said about him often when things got difficult, but it was an incredible learning journey for everyone. And so Parker attended his neighborhood school, elementary school with his brothers, public school, from first grade through until he graduated and transitioned into middle school. And then he attended his neighborhood middle school and transitioned into his neighborhood high school, where he's a sophomore today. It has not necessarily always been easy, but I will say what we have learned along this journey has only prepared Parker and grown his voice in the self-advocate that he is growing up to be. I mean, we just had his IEP this week, and that was brought up. Like, you are growing into this young self-advocate. I want to say, you don't have to use the word young. He's growing into this self-advocate. He's incredible. And saying what he needs and saying what's important to him, voicing what he needs in his life. And that transition into middle school was a big transition. I think, at his elementary school, he was known. We had relationships. He, from everyone, from every person in the office to every person in the cafeteria, every adult on that campus knew Parker. We worked really hard to foster those relationships. So when Parker maybe had wandered down the hallway, maybe forgotten where he was going, every adult on that campus, every parent who volunteered on that campus knew Parker by name, maybe knew where he belonged and where he should be heading. My huge fear was what happens when he's on a middle school campus with a bunch of, in my mind, giant adult teenagers, and he wanders down that hallway. I did not let that stop me from our trajectory, right? I did not let that deter me. So, and we figured it out and we got through that. So I'm excited to talk in the breakout rooms more about what that will look like. But it was exciting and challenging, and I'm excited to pass it now on. Cheers to my incredible friend, Diana Hansen.
Thanks, Emily. So what brings me here might pop in. I keep hearing her at the door. But what brings me here is this redhead. She's very smart, funny, self-determined, and very social. And she loves to see what I'm doing when I'm on Zoom and who I'm Zooming with. So she might come and say hi. But when we started this whole journey 17 years ago, don't let her say that. She'll be like, I'm almost 18. She likes to tell me that multiple times a day, which just makes me cringe. She's our baby. And I don't want to go there yet. So, but we really began this like inclusion journey back in preschool. Victoria was born in 2003, and I was working a full-time job in a professional organization. I was expecting for her to be placed in a childcare, and you know, I would go to work, she would go to childcare, and that's just how things work. Well, we found out within a couple hours of her birth that she had 3 medical diagnoses that kind of changed the way we looked at things and made us rethink what life might look like going forward at this point. So she ended up going to work with me. I hired a nanny / secretary that was right in the office next door. So I still had Victoria. She was in one of those little carriers on my chest most of the time. Oftentimes when clients would come in, I would have baby sped up on my shoulder and all of those kind of fun things. But at about 1.5 years, it became apparent that she was ready to move on. She was ready to have friends to play with. Adults were cool, but you know, she needed space to move around and she needed little people to play with. And so we started looking for a preschool for her. So after quite some challenge with that, as soon as I mentioned the word Down syndrome, it was interesting how people shut down. But the 14th call I made, the person that answered the phone, I didn't mention Down syndrome at that point. She says, we'd love to meet you. Come in, we'll give you a tour. So we came and found a preschool that welcomed her with open arms. It was a place that she was able to go from the time she was 1.5 years until she started school full-time in 1st grade. So she was, you know, with all of the other kids her age, there wasn't anything, like I didn't really understand anything about special or different or segregated. I was offered services from the early intervention, early childhood people. They came in and they helped the teachers at the preschool kind of with some tools or strategies when we would have hiccups around, you know, exploring our self-determination and deciding we just wanted to check the school out and we didn't really want to sit in circle at that moment, or we wanted to see what happened when maybe we bit one of our friends. What was that, like cause and reaction thing? Like, wow, like if I like all of a sudden, like my friend cries and all of these adults come and I get lots of attention. So we needed a little bit of help through some of these stages. But when it came time to transition from preschool into kindergarten, I didn't ever think that she would be in a special classroom or have any sort of special teacher or ride a special bus, because that's not what we had done so far. That's not what my boys did. that's just nothing that was in our vision for the future. And so we transitioned, well, we had 3 transition meetings, I guess. The first one, my husband was working out of town, as he was at that time. And so we met. I was in a meeting with 14 other people, who only one of which I had ever met before. And I sat there listening and receiving all of these reports and assessments and all of these things, and listening to all these things that they were saying she can't do, won't do, probably will never do. And I was like, what? Like, this is kind of a new conversation. And so I left crying and said, we're going to have another meeting. Like, there's just too much happening here, too much information, and I need time to process this and advocate, you know, figure out with my husband, I guess, how to advocate for what we had expected and never thought would be an issue. So the next meeting, instead of just having all of these thoughts in my head, I created a 1-page profile for her, which turned out to be a 2-page like trifold thing, because I had so much to say and so much information that I wanted to share with them, that I thought, this way, if I get emotional or I get frustrated or there's not enough time, at least I have something that I can leave behind that tells them who she really is. And so that was a very helpful tool that, you know, I would encourage for any family to do that. But the second meeting was a lot more successful. I had a chance to go through the evaluations and put my sticky notes on where I had questions. And so I felt a little more prepared. I knew this time there was going to be 14 other people in the room, which I totally didn't expect the first time. When I had met previously with the early childhood team, it was like me and 2 other people, and we would have tea, and it was really like comfortable, and it was at your house, and you know, it was just a conversation, and there wasn't like all of these suits and ties and evaluations happening. And so it was much more comfortable. So the second meeting was a little more like that, because I felt a little more prepared. I had chance to digest the information from all of the evaluations. I had a chance to put together my thoughts and response to what they had and what they were going to offer us. At that meeting, they were offering for Victoria to drive into town. We live out of town a bit. So she was going to drive into Redmond, which we're kind of between Bend and Redmond, but on the opposite side of town, to a school that had a special classroom, and a special bus would come and pick her up. And there was all these special teachers and special therapists, and the kids really had a special time there. And so I was open to, okay, I've never been to a special classroom. I don't know what that is like. So I said, can I go visit this special classroom that you talk of? And we went in, and within 10 minutes or less, I was just like horrified, because my daughter, who is very social and very active, pushed a little boy down the hall in his wheelchair as fast as she could push him, because she thought that was fun. And there was like special people running after them. And then there was like, you know, she was like just terrorizing this whole classroom. Like, she was just almost out of control. And I was like, you know, I don't think this is really going to work well for her or for this very sweet teacher that was in the classroom meeting us. And ironically, the teacher and I had some conversations, and even after we left that day, because after about 10 minutes, it was time for us to go. And she came to meeting number 3 of transition, and she was listening to the conversation, and she was sitting next to me. And after they were all like continuing to try and convince us that that classroom was the best place for Victoria because she would get the best education there, this teacher that ran that classroom that we met with stood up against all of her peers, and probably the administration probably had a few things to say to her afterwards, but she said, this classroom, my classroom, is not a place for Victoria. She needs something more. She needs something different. She needs to be with her peers. So again, I left crying because that's exactly what we were asking for. So we ended up going to our neighborhood school. It was a K-8 school. It was a school that had a resource room, but it was where kids could go in small groups and work if they needed to, or that's where, you know, people could like come from and push in placement or push in supports to her classroom. And so from then on, from kindergarten through 8th grade, she was at that school. She was with her same friends. Most all of them started kindergarten together. And to this day, they're in their junior year together. And most of those students were students that she started kindergarten with. So throughout that time, it was very successful, and all of her supports were pushed into the classroom. When we needed to work on social stuff, it was worked on the playground or in the lunchroom. It wasn't pulled out to a group of people who needed to all work on the same skill. Like, she had role models that she learned from the best, and she was able to be pulled out, not pulled out, but put in the natural environment with somebody, like giving her cues and clues, and also helping the other students, because sometimes the other students were like, well, I don't know how to interact with her sometimes. You know, sometimes instead of using her words, she might go and pull a girl's hair. Like, that meant, I want to play with you. So she just needed some of those skills to learn how to ask students to play. So anyway, we're now in our junior year in high school, and she is in all of her general education classes. She has support that is pushed into 2 classes, and the rest of her supports are really through accommodations that are written into her IEP. So I will switch it over now to my friend Whitney.
Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me? Okay. So I love this slide because it looks like I don't have any kids. I actually have 6 kids. So Emily, word. I have 6 kids. They're all grown. Christopher is my youngest. I actually have 11 grandkids. So, I mean, it would cover like 4 slides. So it's probably good they edited it to this small. But Christopher is my youngest. I have 5 boys and 1 girl, and Chris is my youngest child. He just graduated last June with an extended diploma. And it's funny to think back because I thought I'd be a mom of young kids forever. And then all of a sudden they just all grew up. Christopher was born to our family, and we didn't find out till after he was born, actually about a month and a half later, that he had Down syndrome, because we, anyway, for just weird reasons. And so when we found out, we were just like, oh, that's really weird. Like, I've never known anybody who's had anybody with a child with Down syndrome. I knew of friends of a friend who had a cousin, but I'd never seen a child. So it was just an interesting experience. And I think we were kind of spared any sadness because we were just excited that, okay, this is something new and he's going to be healthy. It's just going to be an interesting journey. And so I definitely thought that in 2002, when he was born, that everything was solved and that we were just going to jump on someone's coattails and just ride the ride. And I realized very soon that I was not only going to be wearing the coat, but I was going to be making it and making all the adjustments as things got different. So it's been an interesting journey. But I started off with the Northwest Down Syndrome Association, and I was just so grateful to find other families that I could talk to and actually look at their kids and watch and just see what it meant to be a child with Down syndrome. And I did notice that Christopher was a little bit different. I kind of thought he was the, you know, I mean, this is so stereotypical, but I kind of picture everybody else's kids were kind of happy and friendly and communicating and talking in some way. And mine just seemed like a really crunchy, grumpy old man. And I thought, I have a broken kid with Down syndrome. And we found out later that he also experiences autism. And so his social skills were a lot different. And again, I have 6 kids. So not, you know, he was around communication all the time and he just wasn't learning. And we, as he entered school, we started realizing that people were thinking that because Christopher doesn't talk, that he doesn't think. And if he doesn't think, he can't learn. And so that was kind of how the trajectory was starting to head. But luckily I knew the word inclusion. And so I said it a lot, but I didn't really know exactly what it meant, but I just kept saying it. And I figured if I said it a lot, somehow it would happen. And I think somehow they were enough, I don't know if it was fear or just annoyed by me, that they put him in a general ed classroom. And so we started out, I mean, he started in preschool with, you know, being included, but they kept saying, well, it's going to be harder. It's going to be harder. And so as we started elementary school, there was definitely immediately conversations of changing his placement. And I just kept saying, but I just know he's going to learn from being with typical kids. And luckily we went to church. And so there was a lot of friends that we made and he made from church that knew him, that when he went to school, that he had a lot of support just by friendships. And so we started seeing the value of just having people that knew him and that were his age, that were helping him to learn what it meant to be, you know, a first grader, a second grader. And when Christopher became a third grader, that's when he got his official diagnosis with autism. And that really opened things up because we realized everybody has a right to a voice. So Christopher needs to find his. So we worked with our speech therapist and he now uses a communication device. It's called an Accent 800. And it's, you know, it's a long process. I had no idea that just providing a device does not mean you've provided a child with language. I didn't realize I would have to learn a brand new language. And sometimes I struggle with the English language, so it was really hard. And then I would have to teach Christopher, but I would also, not only that, I had to help the staff who would be working with him also buy into this and then learn it so that they could teach it. And so, you know, it's been a challenge, but Christopher really did well in the sense that he loved the school process. Well, that's probably not true. He survived the school process with very few wounds, we'll say. And so as we transitioned to middle school, you know, we kind of figured things out for elementary school. We changed school for different reasons. There was just a little bit more support in the neighborhood at this other school. And he was in a general ed class, but we had teachers that we knew. And as he transitioned to middle school, there was the talk of like, well, now there's going to be 7 classes. So that's going to be really hard. So we think we're going to have this special room. And anyway, so we just had conversations of like, well, he's never, you know, been separated for long periods of time. So why would we start now? And then that started making me realize, but if I'm going to say he can do it, what is it going to take to do it? So that's when we kind of started the conversation with everybody of what does the class look like? Each class we would break down in kind of like 15-minute increments and think, okay, what would he need as far as support in the first 15 minutes in biology or in biology? And what about the second 15 minutes and then the third 15 minutes, you know, and we just kind of started identifying what support would look like. And we had conversations of like, when he was in biology, I remember they're like, well, we're just really worried that we work with a lot of really dangerous chemicals. And so I said, well, then don't hand him acid, you know, hand him water or have him set up the beakers or, you know, that kind of thing. So I'm like, I don't want him to potentially burn down the school, but I would like him to participate in groups, right? And so we started just really talking about what are your fears? And then let's talk about what support we can put in place to kind of alleviate those fears. So we started really seeing progress and stuff. And I don't want to lie and say that it was all perfect, but what I realized was that whenever there was an obstacle, that's not a reason to take him out of the room. It's a reason to have a conversation to build more support in. And so when they realized that I was not going to entertain conversations of taking him out, but I was going to talk about, okay, let's meet again, let's brainstorm, let's come up with more ideas, then that helped him to kind of do better. And so as he went into high school, kind of the same thing. There was a day when he has an aide throughout his day. And so Christopher does need a lot of prompts and a lot of reminders, and especially he needs help with his communication using his device. So and I'll tell this one last story, but there was one time when I realized I also need to have everybody needs to have high expectations, but I need to continue to have those. And he had an aide that was helping him transition. And one day the aide was sick and didn't show up, and they forgot to provide another aide to fill that spot. So after lunch, he the bell rang, and the aide that was with him at lunch went her way, and then Christopher was kind of left there. So he got up and he walked to his next class, and it happened to be the last class of the day. And I came to pick him up, and I was like, yeah, so Christopher never walked out, because he normally just walked out with everybody. And I went to the teacher, and they were like, oh my gosh. So anyway, we're searching all over the school. He was sitting in that class. He was waiting, though, for the prompt to tell him to go. So what it told me is that we can't make assumptions that just because we walk with somebody, or somebody is being provided support, that they always need that level of support. And it made me realize that it's important to do that at the beginning, but really always work about building that independence, because that moment showed us that Christopher doesn't need an aide to walk with him, right? Nobody wants to be walking with a 40-year-old mom down the hallway, right? And so we started talking about maybe just meeting him at the classroom, And so anyway, there was a lot of different things that really helped us. The other thing I would say is that we started early on talking about that Christopher's going to graduate with a diploma. And so there's not going to be a conversation of anything else but that. And what that did was that helped the conversations that some of the requirements for those diploma options require being in the general ed setting. And so it helped us to kind of have those conversations of, well, but his goals for the future are to graduate. So we're going to need to do whatever requirements need to happen to make that happen. And that kind of helped us to stay on that same path. And then that habit of just revisiting and redirecting the staff to kind of really keep us on track. And he did. He graduated. And honestly, I really think that he was praying for COVID to happen. I think it might be our fault, because the graduation process was perfect for him. He absolutely loved it. So sorry about that, but took a world pandemic to make it happen. Anyway, so that's my story, and I'll turn the time over now to Kim Gunderson Moore.
Hi, thanks so much, Whitney. Well, yep, I'm Kim, and this is my family. And that's my older son, Aaron, who's going to be turning 32 on Monday, and my younger son, Cameron, who is 30, which means he was born in 1990. And I am the oldest parent on this panel and have the oldest children. But I decided I really wanted to be a part of this, because I'm here to let you know that there is life, there is a rich life beyond high school. And also I didn't know whether to put an old picture of my family or a new, so this is a new picture, but I wanted to show you Cameron and his dad. That's Paul. And Paul left us, he had ALS, so he passed away 3 years ago. I can't believe it. But he's a big part of our story. So when Cameron was born, right away, when they put him on my breast, I looked down and said, he looks like he has Down syndrome. And there was only one person in the room that heard me say that, and that was my mother-in-law. I actually let my mother-in-law in the room for the birth of my son. She is a sweet lady. And I had to convince our family doctor to do some looking into this, because he didn't think so. And so the next morning he took a pediatrician, and they did a head to toe, and he came back and he told me what I already knew. We all know these things, right? One of the saddest things is, and he was a lovely doctor, but he delivered my older son as well. But one of the first things he said when he sat on my bed to talk to me about all of this is that this could be a problem for a marriage, and I thought, oh my God, that was a lot to take in the first few minutes of finding out for sure that my son had Down syndrome. So anyway, that's how we started. But from there, Cameron was just embraced by our family, and we just decided that he was going to be included in everything that our family did. And we were very active in the outdoors and in our community. So again, I can reiterate what Diana and others have said, that early intervention, early childhood special education, warm and fuzzy, loved it once we got into it. And I agreed to have people come to the home. And in the beginning, I was kind of like, oh, I just want to spend time with my baby, and I don't want to have specialists coming into the home. But that changed quite rapidly with these wonderful people. And So beyond that, I'll kind of zip through that. Those early years were pretty good, and I connected with other families that had children with Down syndrome and other different abilities, and it was wonderful. Then we needed to transition into kindergarten, and I will say that I think what was most helpful was to have at least someone in the education system, and my husband Paul we were a good team. I can just say that we were a good team. We needed to have someone in our back pocket that was willing to say what we wanted, and that was, we wanted Cameron to go to our local school. We're in the Tumalo area. We've lived here forever, and his older brother went to Tumalo School, so we wanted him there. And again, what other people have said today is that, you know, the education system wanted him to go all the way into Redmond, which was going to be quite a bus ride for him, and to go to kindergarten and beyond. And we just said, no, you know, we've had a really good experience at Tumalo Elementary. Let's keep him there. And so I can back up and say, as Heather said, I retired after 35 years, a few years ago, of being a teacher with kids who are deaf. Well, I even thought that I knew about the IEP process pretty well, but it is so true. Once I became a parent of a child that was needing this, I must say, I think I probably cried at every single IEP. And I think it's because Paul and I knew from the get-go that we wanted Cameron to be included in his community, be that his home, his school, his community. And, you know, the education system back then, and maybe still is right now, I don't know, but was saying, you know, he needs to go to a special classroom. And our best bet was, they thought, was to go into Redmond to get that. But we stood firmly, and we had each other to kind of really feel strength from, and a couple of other professionals in the community. And he did end up going to Tumalo, and he ended up going K through 8. And I can say that I'm so proud of the fact, one of the things I've done right in this world is that I was on the committee that was planning to make Tumalo Elementary into Tumalo Community School. And once that started to happen, then I signed him up. I wanted him to be a part of that. So he was able to stay there through middle school, and had a wonderful community there. But we were told from the get-go that we would have to give up things for him to be able to be there. And one of the things that they felt strongly about, well, okay. So sometimes in IEP meetings, you've probably already found, is that they stay really away from talking about money, but really it comes down to money, right? And as a parent, I learned fast and furiously that I needed to stand up and say, this is my child, I know what he needs, and he is also your student. And I expect that you are going to have a plan for him. One of the things that we asked for, and they were not ready to give us, was Cameron is nonverbal. He always has been. He still is. After years of speech therapy, he is nonverbal. But back then, you know, he was early in this process. He was nonverbal. He also was diagnosed with autism at age 4. And smart guy, you know, he teaches me so many things. But when you first look at Cameron, he doesn't make a lot of eye contact. He's not a reader. He's not a writer. You might not think he's smart. He's smart. Anyway, we wanted him to have a sign language interpreter because I had started teaching him sign language at home because, gosh, that's my field, and he's not speaking, so what about sign language? He glommed onto it. He loved it. He wanted more of it. He memorized a lot of signs. So that's what we asked for, and of course they didn't want to provide that. And I know it was because of money. It was new in those days. It's like, no, you have sign language interpreters for people who are deaf, not for people who have Down syndrome. So that was a process. but I can say that every year Cameron had a person with signing skills. They didn't provide him with a certified sign language interpreter ever, but he did have sign language assistance. And what I ended up having to do, as we all do as parents, I had to get involved a lot. So from the time he was in kindergarten on, I went into the school as a volunteer because I was working 4 days a week. I could do that. I taught sign language a lot of the years at Tumalo Community School. All the kids would come into the library that wanted to take sign, and it was just a wonderful experience. And it was really great for Cameron because he felt more included, and those kids knew how to communicate with him a little bit more effectively, and he made friends, you know. So that was wonderful. Middle school, you know, as we all say, middle school is a challenge anyway with our kiddos, whether they have different abilities or not, because hormones. So I can say that that was kind of it was a roller coaster. We survived it. He went into high school. That's where they wanted him to be, in a self-contained classroom. And once again, we had to really gird our loins, as they say, and go in and they had a person who was teaching in the life skills class that we didn't feel confident with. I can say that, that's putting it lightly. So what we ended up doing is going through the teacher who was a little bit more working with kids with reading skills and writing skills, but he agreed to be Cameron's case manager, and then his sign language assistant was his main person who would get him around to all the classes. Cameron was included in most classes, and we had to be creative. We had to step outside the box because he wasn't your typical learner. So I can say that I think he taught people a lot. He was a good teacher. He still is a good teacher. And maybe he missed out on some things, but I think for the most part, it was great. And beyond high school, I'm kind of zipping through here, but beyond high school, we went into the transition program, which I think was good for Cameron. It kind of gave him some more focus on living in the community and those kind of skills. And since high school, he's been volunteering in several different businesses. Money doesn't mean a whole lot to Cameron, but work does. He has a good work ethic. He's strong. He's worked at Habitat for Humanity Restore. He's worked at the Reptile Zone. He's worked at Tumalo Store, the Firehouse in Tumalo. So all kinds of places. And currently, yesterday, he was up on the mountain, up at Bachelor, learning how to alpine ski with Oregon Adaptive Sports. Yay to them. They're great people. So I've got some fun memories of that. And anyway, okay, la-di-da, there we go.
Thank you guys so much to our panelists just for sharing. That was just really insightful and encouraging and helpful as a parent that's behind you guys in the journey. To learn from your guys' experience is so valuable. So I'm just so grateful. Thank you guys for sharing your stories. So we have a few questions that had come in beforehand that we were hoping that our panel could take a few minutes to answer before we go to our breakout rooms. So these are kind of popcorn. If you're a panelist and you see one of these questions that you think you'll get an answer to that you want to share on, just unmute yourself and share. So the first one is, what subjects should be represented as goals in the IEP? So I think this was around, just in elementary school, it's usually reading, writing, math, with some other things. And as you transition to secondary school, do you have goals around social studies and science and other goals as well?
I mean, I can speak to a little bit of that. I would say anything that you want to take data on and show progress. But like things like going to the bathroom or bathroom protocols, to me, don't need to be a goal, right? Because they're going to offer the bathroom to anybody. There can be protocols for those things, but anything you want to have data on and showing progress so that we can continue to kind of move up that ladder.
Great, thank you, Whitney. Any other thoughts on that, panelists? Should we move to the next one?
Yeah, so the way that you determine what goals would be within a section of the IEP called the present levels. So that's how you determine those areas of concern, and then you can take data on it, like Whitney said. And so it really is individualized to, whatever the child or student, young adult is working on, that, within the present levels, you're sharing your concerns. What are the areas of concern? Those will be then the focus of how you create the rest of your IEP with your goals and your supports and services. So it's really individualized.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Okay. The next one, sorry, I'm having a hard time clicking my screen here. There we go. What might some goals be for promoting self-advocacy and independence at school? And what would that look like in a service summary? Like, how does that show up on the IEP?
Yeah, so I think one of the goals around self-advocacy for Victoria was that she would ask for help when she needed help. That was hard for her, going from a smaller school where she knew everyone in the building to a much larger school where she knew very few people other than her peers that transferred with her. Many of her classes were new students and new teachers, and so she just wouldn't ask for help. So we had to write a goal around her asking for help. And we worked on that, both the school team and at home, in practicing just asking random people, do you know where classroom number 102 is? Do you know where the bathroom on this floor is? Like, whatever the question might be. So we wrote a goal around that for her, and that was super helpful that first year of high school.
Parker had the exact same goal because he had the exact same support need. And then we also have a goal around organization. We've had different goals around organization, and they've shifted and changed. Now we're looking more around organization utilizing technology, because that is how he wants to organize his life. He wants to use technology for everything, like most 15-year-olds will. So we were talking about making sure everything is done utilizing technology, because he doesn't want to use paper and pencil to write things down. And so that he will independently be writing down those assignments, keeping track of them, but not writing them down, that he will enter them into his Outlook calendar. And that will also, we talked about, he identified that he feels like as soon as it's assigned, he has to get it done right away, even if the due date is, say, a week from now or 2 weeks from now. Because of anxiety, he identified he feels like he has to get it done right this second. And that could mean that he's working on things for 6-7 hours, and it's becoming problematic. So we're talking about then he comes and then asks for support in helping to break it down into manageable pieces, breaking it down into over the course of a few days, and working with somebody to do that, either in his tutorial classroom with support staff, or with mom or dad, to break it down and say, here's how we can do this over the course of a few days and have it done well before the due date. Therefore, if something comes up on one of those days, you still have backup days in your calendar to do that. So we did write a goal around organization and utilizing technology that then could be in his iPad and in his phone. So then it was transferable between those two things. The calendar can be used at mom's house and dad's house. We both have access to it, which he said was important to him. And the school was super supportive of that goal, kind of transitioning to adulthood, and the fact that Google Calendar is something that, is used in most adult worlds. So.
Thank you, Emily. That's very helpful. Okay, the next one is, what are examples of success stories and or challenges in teaching kids at their academic level in subjects for which we have instructional standards, like English, language arts, math, science, while allowing them to participate in courses with their peers?
So I'll just say, you don't have to be at grade level to be included with your peers. In fact, you just have to be making progress towards your IEP goals. And so the reality is special education is a service, not a place. So examples of success stories would be that, I'm trying to remember who was the person who, it was Whitney talking about how her son was included within the chemistry class, right? I mean, he was included with his peers and they simply did some modifications around, his engagement. So I think that's a perfect example of what that would look like. But I think I'm going to say that one more time, is that your child does not have to be at grade level to be included with their peers in a general education class. And really all students are general education students first. It's around what supports through their specially designed instruction that can support them in accessing the general education curriculum, which includes the instructional standards. Whitney, did you want to?
Yeah, well, one thing I was going to say is that what I always did with Christopher too, in the kind of those situations, is I would think of the classroom and the curriculum as a half circle. And for every student, there's 20 points on that half circle that they're going to learn in a period of time. We would choose 3 or 4 of those for Christopher and modify those and really focus in on those. So he was still learning the same thing the other kids were learning. And then we would find different ways that were motivating to him. So if the teacher was talking about cells combining to make molecules for 20 minutes, he might get bored. So he would listen for as long as he could. And then we had an iPad that had YouTube videos on the same subject that he could put headphones on. So he was still listening, but it was in a form that was working for him. And then with labs, like I said, we didn't hand him fire, but we helped him. He was part of the lab group, and he would set up the beakers, or he would put the trash away or whatever, because everybody has an assignment. We just made sure that the assignment worked for what worked for him. So just knowing you don't have to bite the whole thing off, you make it work for them, but it should be based off of general ed curriculum, if that makes sense.
Awesome, thank you, that's super helpful. So another one was, how did your school/team give your child access to classes with their peers, both core and elective, while still meeting support needs for your child?
Well, I mean, way back in the old days, when Cameron was going through all of this, it was that strong push that his dad and I had on his having a sign language assistant. So he was able to go into classes with his typical peers because he did have somebody who was a bridge of communication for him and also could help him connect with his peers. And we did find allies in the educational system in the different schools that he was in to help design it so that there were some peers, typical developing peers that were maybe earning a little extra credit or something that could sit with Cameron or run with Cameron or, connect with him. So, yeah.
Diana, did you have?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I thought Diana was trying to talk at the same time.
Yeah, go ahead, Diana.
I was just going to say, for Victoria, she learns so well from her peers, and she has a history of proving that her peers are some of her best teachers. And so she has mostly peer support in all of her classes, except for like this term, biology and English. She's having a little bit of adult support, but most all of her classes, it's just natural peer supports.
Well, and I was just going to say that the IEP is what drives everything. So any accommodations or modifications or supports, like my son having an iPad with his favorite music on it and headphones, were part of his sensory break. So if he needed a break, that was there. with them, and they knew that he needed a timer to know when it would start and when it would stop. And then we talked about what it would look like if he needed a break, and all those things were on his IEP so that they were easily accessible, so he could stay in the classroom, get the support he needed to be successful, knowing that there was going to be times that were going to be more challenging and others that weren't. And then again, whenever there were problems that came up that we didn't have a solution for, then we would meet again and brainstorm some more ideas to kind of see what else do we need to add. So it was kind of a constant discussion, because, you know, teenagers change.
What do you know now? Oh wait, I think I skipped a question. Because my screen's being funky. Nope, that's right. So what do you know now that you wish you would have known ahead of time?
How much time do we have? No, I'm just kidding.
All right. Like we have probably 3 more minutes before we hopefully break to breakout rooms.
Well, being the oldest member here and having the oldest child, I guess I would have loved to have known that things were going to be okay, because it's, you know, some IEP meetings were so embroiled, and I was, you know, we pushed so hard and we were exhausted, and, you know, it was a recurring thing every year. And I'm not saying it was all negative, because we had some great meetings as well, but I can just say that, and this is coming from a child that, again, is, you know, challenged with being nonverbal and a non-reader and writer. But, you know, Cameron is, because we had him included in everything, to this day, I'll be in Bend or Redmond or Tumalo, and people will go, "Is that Cameron?" I have no idea who they are, but they sure know him. And so anyway, he's a very happy young man, and very capable and able to be involved in his community. So your kids are too.
I wish I would have believed a little, I wish I would have had a little bit less anxiety. And I wish I would have believed a little bit more in the strength of middle schoolers and the students that would be at school with my son. I went back to a lot of fear and a fear-based place, that somehow all of these students that would be there and the teachers that would be there would not be loving, amazing humans that would want to get to know and support my son, and would want to be his friends. And that the students that knew him and supported him at Lone Pine would also be going there and would be those same humans, just at a new school. All of those things went out the window because anxiety pushed in, right? All those things went out the window, and I forgot them. And he rose to the occasion, right? And did we have hiccups along the way? Of course, but incredibly beautiful things happened. He matured, and the same bumps in the road that we faced different ones, but we faced bumps in the road because it's middle school. And in middle school, that's part of teenagers attending middle school, is bumps in the road. So that's just part of the experience of raising teenagers. So I think that remembering that there will be those things, however, as a whole, especially if you have had a positive experience at your elementary school, especially with their peers, those and you're transitioning from a neighborhood school to another neighborhood school, those same students are transitioning with your son or daughter. That's, I mean, I kind of, for whatever reason, I forgot that, and I wish I would have remembered that along the way. So, yeah.
Awesome, that's very helpful. Okay, so the last question, maybe we can talk about this in breakout rooms. I'm going to leave this one for breakout rooms. So panelists, if you could just try to remember this question, how did you manage getting multiple teachers to know your child and engage them as a learner? And maybe we can discuss those in the chat or in the meeting room so that we have time to at least do the quick get to know each other thing. So I am going to right now, I'm going to skip the resource, this tips page because this is going to be available in the recording and the slide deck and some resources. So you guys can reach out to us if you have questions about this slide because I really want to get to our time. This is an example of a person-centered plan that we've made for my daughter that we use for her team. And we have a whole training on this on our website that's going to be in the links as well of how to make one of these. Like the panelists were sharing how important that is to have a way to introduce your child to their new team, and to build that roadmap of understanding them as a whole person prior to your transition. So I'm going to go ahead and send us to breakout rooms. The way this is going to work is you are going to be able to select which room you go to. So right here, you should be able to see at the bottom of your screen, I've invited everybody to breakout room, select the one you want to go on to if you're a high school family or middle school family, and everybody should end up in rooms, and then we can go from there.
Callie, I'm not, oh, I found it, sorry.
I don't know how to go do the breakout room.
Me neither. It's different than what I'm used to. Yeah.
How do I do that?
Yeah, which one do we click on? Have you figured it out?
No.
Me neither. Who is this?
Oh, my name is Stephanie.
Hi, Stephanie. I'm Kim.
Let me just write.
Let's see.
I'm going to try and put you in there, Kim. Hang on just a second.
Okay, thanks.
Did you want to go into the high school room or did you want to go into the?
Yes, I think I'm supposed to be in the high school.
Okay.
Thank you, thank you.
That's so weird that it didn't ask you. It should have asked you if you wanted to go into a room.
Yeah, that's usually what I've seen in other meetings, but I did. Thank you. Okay, that's,
It didn't take you there.
oh.
So on the bottom of your screen, do you have like a button that says more? Like it says polls, chat, share screen. Does it have more?
No, I just lost you again. I'm back to that.
So if you click like your mouse on the screen, a little row of different icons come up: mute, stop video, security, participants, polls.
I did have that before, but now I'm back to that same screen that I took a picture of. I can't, so I'm totally out of the meeting, it looks like now. I know where those icons usually are, but they're not on my screen.
Okay. All right, I'm going to ask Callie to see if she can pull you in. Hang on just a sec.
Okay.
I'm so sorry, Kim, to have you sit there. I think that they're going to come back now because we're over time. But I'm absolutely flummoxed. I have no idea why it wouldn't let you in.
Oh, that's okay. I will just sign off then. And
Okay.
it was a great experience. And I don't get it either, but I'm afraid to touch anything.
Well, I am so sorry, and we really appreciate you joining.
Oh, thanks a lot. Yep, take care.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Huh.
Hello, everyone. I'm so sorry that we are a little over time, so we're going to buzz through the end here because and if you need to go early, this is being recorded. It will be on our website if you need to step out, if you have other places to be. I am going to go through our announcement slides really quick, just because I want to wrap us up. We had a lot of great conversation in our breakout room, and I am thinking that the high school group may have as well. So I'm going to follow up with some communication about potentially organizing a secondary follow-up conversation for all of us to have, because we're all in spring getting ready to transition and make those big changes. So I think there's more that we could do to talk with each other more about that. So our last kind of slide here is the resources. So this is a link to the Oregon State Standards where you can go and you can follow and find all the state level standards for your grade, for your child, of what they're learning in every subject. So you can work to align your IEP goals with the state standards, with the supports in place that are needed. So there's a link to that. There's a link to our person-centered planning training to make your one-page profile that we talked about earlier as you're introducing your child to your team and to your community and wherever you're transitioning to next. I will say one thing that has been super helpful for us, we're not even transitioned yet, we're fifth grade going into sixth, but I called over to the middle school, figured out the name of the different case managers, and I just chatted 30 minutes with each one of them, talked with them, got to know them, introduced us very informally, sent our person-centered plan. And from that, they kind of were able to go, maybe this would be a better fit for a case manager before we even had our meeting. So really encouraging you to use that tool of a one-page profile as a way to introduce your child to that setting and help your team get to know your family and your vision. And then Fact Oregon's IEP training is on their website. There's a link to it here that's going to go out as a follow-up to us. So you'll be able to get to that easily for some more information. We are going to be doing a drawing for an evaluation drawing. So everybody who fills out the evaluation link I'm emailing out will be entered for a $15 Amazon gift card. So please fill that out. It helps us know how to plan and program and provide things that are actually helpful to our families. So that'd be really amazing if you could do that. And then we have a Strong Start leadership training that we're actually just launching in partnership with the Oregon Council on Developmental Disabilities through the OHA COVID CARES Act funding. So we are rolling that out right now. It is coming up in the next several weeks. All of our dates are here on the website and on the flyer. And so if you're interested in learning more about that, this would be also a super helpful thing if you're looking to go through some really good leadership training around these concepts that we're talking about today to feel more equipped to advocate and more equipped to have those conversations. I would really encourage everybody to apply for this because it's launching very soon. So that is all I have today. This is our contact information to get in touch. And I'm so sorry we're over time. I try to be really good about that. But I just want to say thank you so much to our panelists and for everybody who took their time to be with us today. We are so, so grateful. This has been really, really helpful for everyone, at least for me, but I could tell even from our conversation for the group. So thank you for your time today, all of you guys who took the time to share with us. And thank you guys for joining. We will be in touch via email very soon.